The Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is our Week 11 review. I am BuckMetrics. I am coming to you from Newport Beach, California. My co-host, Robert Martin, is coming to you from Canada. Robert, here I am just about two and a little bit more weeks away from Thanksgiving. I remember that you mentioned that you had Canadian Thanksgiving last month. So does that mean that you're about 2 weeks or so away from Canadian Halloween? Is that how this works?
Something like that. Yeah. It's weird how there is because it's actually technically we actually have the true Thanksgiving. You guys actually moved your Thanksgiving back, but yeah, it's weird how there's two different Thanksgivings and they should unify them. But yeah.
Yeah, I find that entirely believable. We tend to do stupid things like that, say like daylight savings time and all kinds of things that'll make men popular. So we'll just move on to looking back at week 11 here. If you are new, thank you very much. We appreciate you listening, viewing, whatever. This is our glossary. Please do a screen grab of it. Save it in the workbook where you do all your college football stuff and refer to it throughout this podcast and remainder of this season. And if you are returning, thank you for your loyalty. We appreciate it. With that, we will get to who won week 11. I'm going actually with the player here more than a team. Didn't see all of this game. It was one that I was watching for chunks of time until it became really not that competitive. But Jesus, Jalen Milroe, what a show this guy put on. Amazing to see a guy who has become such a skilled passer, didn't really have to show it this much this game, who was just clearly like the best athlete and just the fastest guy on the team. It's scary. It's not quite Reggie Bush that can throw, but it's not quite not Reggie Bush who can throw. I'm not counting Alabama out of the national title race. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, they've always been one of those bubble teams. Not as good as they've been in the past, but we're now seeing that floor, or rather that kind of upside, where it's okay. They're not as good as they've been in the past. They beat Georgia, but they let Georgia come back in that game. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Tennessee. But hey, like they smacked down LSU. I'm fairly sure eliminating them. Probably, yeah,
Yeah.
they're 6-3 now, so LSU's done now. So, but they were dominant in this game. I was able to watch, I think, a bit more pieces of this game just consistently throughout. This was never result here was never in question. It's funny that we're even talking about it being a mirage at 42-13 because it was like 42 to 6 before. Like it was an absolute demolition of this team. It was a blowout. Not only that, we were both our model. Alabama was a dual model play. Not only that, but then when it came out that everybody was betting LSU, I doubled down on Alabama immediately. I'm like, all right, and yeah, that. But this is the thing, right? It's no, Jalen Milroe did really good, and I think the whole point of Jalen Milroe, and it may have taken a little bit of adjustment there with Kalen DeBar, because he's not Michael Penix Jr. He's clearly not, right?
Mm-hmm.
12 for 18, 109 yards. That's not Michael Penix Jr. numbers. But when you're looking at this and you have a guy who can do 12 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns, that's different. If you adjust your play calling ever so slightly, you could really take advantage of that in a game like this, in a big game like this, and you can apparently just destroy Brian Kelly's defense, and that's exactly what they did. But yeah, again, this Alabama team it's not a team that I think is the most, it's not, again, they're not a favorite to win this, but they're like, it's a team that if you get into the playoff, and they're not going to get a bye, they'll be playing in the first round. If you're a team in the first round, this is a team that, like, if Alabama is like a 3.5 point dog, a 6.5 point dog to like an Ohio State or something, that is not a team you want to play. If you don't want to have to play this Alabama team, is my take on that.
Yeah, a couple of points to follow up on what you said. I just also want to point out not only was this just an absolute demolition, this is a demolition at probably the most challenging venue, Death Valley, at night that any team can face. Bonus points for that. And then you brought up just about Kalen DeBoer getting used to this quarterback that he has here. It's worth pointing out how he has had tremendous success with Jalen Milroe, who is very different from Michael Penix, who is very different from Jake Hayner, and yet he's had success with all three of these guys. There's a lot to be said for that. For example, my team has a brilliant offensive coach, but it's pretty clear that if his quarterback can't run, the whole thing implodes really quickly. The machine does not go burr, as they say. So just this is just a flat out just a brilliant football coach that they've got there in DeBoer. Not that I'm breaking news on that, but you just have to emphasize this isn't okay. This is our system, and we're going to make our system work no matter where we are. We're just football coaches, and we'll figure out how to make it work. The last thing I want to point out too is there's a lot of sharp people who are pretty bearish or have been pretty bearish on the Alabama pass defense, and I've just my metrics have had just a different narrative. I've had them with just a really impressive defensive apex, and I think I think the numbers at this point really need to outweigh the eyeballs. Nussmeier is a really good quarterback. This is a really good offense that they just shut down, specifically a really good passing offense.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. They did actually really shut. We talk about this offense and just a complete domination on that front, but yeah, they really did shut down LSU. And LSU has been consistent at times, but to be able to completely shut them down like this, it is still very impressive. So yeah, no, watch out for this. Bama team could actually be sneakily good down the stretch here.
There's another team to watch out for as well. We'll get to them in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Your winner of Week 11.
Yeah, so I'm giving it to Colorado. We've been pretty rough on Colorado for very good reason too. It's not like they don't deserve it, but at the same time though, yeah, they did pretty well in this game. They dominated Texas Tech this entire game. Texas Tech has been having a little bit of a resurgence of recent years, of recent weeks. And Colorado just dominated them, right? Texas Tech took an early lead, but then Colorado just came right back. Shedeur Sanders passing for just under 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then not much on the ground, but when you can just torch them like that through the air, that's all you need there, right? No, a lot. Now, I think I'll give them the winner this week, but the thing is, I finished this on Sunday, and I think now we're seeing way too much overreaction to the other side now, where people are like, they could win the CFP. I'm like, all right, that's clearly an overreaction the other way. I think I'm like, hey, good job. It's like a little fist bump to them. Yeah, good job, guys. They're like, they're going to, okay, that's a bit much, guys. We can tone that down a little bit. But yeah, they had a good week. And the thing is, they've needed a couple of good weeks. They have a couple of losses here. But again, based on some other games that we'll talk about in a little bit, they could actually make the Big 12 championship game, and they could make the college football playoff. Now, again, that is a very different discussion than beating Ohio State, beating Oregon. Like, there is a mile wide, like a mile long line of teams that are better than them, but they did good. They had a good week. I'll give them that.
Controversial hot take from Robert. He's saying that Texas Tech is not Ohio State. I will say this. I look at this brilliant passing with a little more yards per average or per attempt,
Yeah.
but the 0 interceptions more than makes up for that. And with 0 running game in assistance there, and Shedeur making up almost over a quarter of that, there's a ranked team that lost a game very much like this, where it was all in the quarterback and they just couldn't hold up. I think we're talking about that later. That would be Miami, but they pulled it out when Miami didn't. So to your point, congratulations. Texas Tech is a weird place to play, and this is it's not a great defensive team, but 41 points on the road, I don't care where you are, is impressive. So good for them. Clearly their offensive line still has issues to work out, but God, you got to give the guy credit. I was not impressed him coming into the season. And honestly, he's been better than I thought this season in Shedeur Sanders. But this game is about what he was last year, about that 100, 110 apex. But on the road, good for him. And they do have the path, as you said. All right. Who lost week 11? I'm going to admit I could not. I'm not objective about this because I did have the under in this game. And I should have lost because BYU should have converted a 2-point conversion prior to the sequence that we're going to go through here. And that would have put it to over to begin with. But Utah's had a rough season. I'm just a little sick and tired about everybody looking at this team and saying it's like those classic Utah really good defensive teams. It's been a rough season. You basically have your rival on the ropes here in BYU, who is undefeated. You cannot lose this game. And so what happens here? They're up 21-19 with let's do the math here, about 4.5 minutes left. And so beautiful drive here, 3 plays for -7 yards. Congratulations on that. At least they did chew up somehow 3 minutes. I'm not sure how the math works on that. That's impressive. But they did. Just wondering if they wish they had Andy Ludwig back or offensive coordinator instead of this new guy who ruined Northwestern's offense years and years ago. But anyways, so then they punt. They pinned BYU way back inside their 5-yard line. Couple of rough possessions. Did you see this game, by the way?
No,
or am I like breaking this? Oh, jeez. BYU. Okay, yeah, it was within their 10. So BYU is at 4th and 10, basically at their own 9-yard line. Retzlaff is sacked basically at his own 1. It actually looked like a safety real time. But holding penalty on Utah. Let's not forget again, this is like Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley, defensive geniuses and this, that, and boy, they're just the Iowa of the mountain time zone, whatever. So then they crap the bed on that. BYU gets a gift first down, just completely courtesy of the Utah defense. So then what happens? Just in rapid succession here, this awesome BYU or Utah defense gives up a 30-yard completion to Chase Roberts, a 12-yard completion, and then a 14-yard run. Boom, boom, 3 in a row. And so predictably, Utah gives up a game-winning field goal with 3 seconds left. It's just, if your defense is as good as everybody claims you are, and that's really your identity about this, the Iowa of the mountain time zone, you're not doing this. You're just not doing this. There's no way your classic Iowa does this. And I've pointed this out. I wanted to do a trending here. So my metrics go back to 2014 here. We see this a lot, and we'll talk about this happening in the SEC in a few minutes here. But my gosh, I've made it clear that you need to be rated at a 7 or above on either side of the ball to be elite. And really, it's closer to 8 is really your mark of elite. Great. They had an elite off defense in 2018 and 19. This is as far back as my metrics go. But since then, they've been okay to good, but not elite. And the other thing we'll talk about here is there's just the lazy national college football narratives where they just, they get something that was shoved in front of their face 5 years ago and they just stick with it because nothing's been, I don't know. There's not been a huge counter narrative that's just been shoved in front of their face that's on the front page of the, I don't know, figuratively, if not literally, of the news section, because there is no sports section anymore. But you know what? Utah lost it, and they lost it because they are not the defensive team that everybody seemed to think, although I was screaming this from the rooftops last year and before this year. End of sermon. Robert, I will throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, this one is inexcusable. They had a pretty big lead in this game. It wasn't 29-19, 21-19. BYU had to come back in this game. And I remember I think I fell asleep because this was late at night. This was like a late game. This happened 2 or 3 a.m. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's over. Utah's got this, BYU, and that was the thing. But then I wake up middle of the night there, and all of a sudden it's, oh, somehow BYU won? And I'm like, okay. And then there's like a bunch of posts on Twitter, oh, this is crazy, this is crazy. And yeah, this is the thing, right? This is your rival. And again, this season has clearly not gone the way you wanted it to go. But you have a chance to knock out your rival, I believe at home too, right?
He was totally shook. Totally shook by this is a great home field advantage.
Yeah.
And when it happened most, you couldn't even ride that.
No.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, this is the thing. You're exposing your rival as a fraud at home. You're finally having things go your way. And again, okay, yeah, if you get a first down there instead of the negative 7 yards in 3 plays, this is a different story. But whatever, okay. You're able to pin them, rely on your defense. There's that holding call that's bad. And then the thing is, the real takeaway from this after the game is that the Utah athletic director is like, we're ashamed to be in the Big 12 after this. And yeah. I'm like, okay, but you're in the Big 12 because that Big 10 didn't come knocking to act. I feel like some people in the Big 12 were pissed at them for that. They obviously got fined, but I feel like some people were mad at them for that comment for the simple reason that it's, come on guys, what are we doing here? You're here because we did you a solid by letting you in here. We didn't have to let you in here. And now you're going to say that now you're going to start trashing us and the refereeing? No, I think there's clearly a lot of anger in BYU, not in BYU, at Utah here, within the program, within the university. And I think that seems to have come out here at the end of this. And again, like, the holding call, whatever, right? Like, you have to get better. You have to do better than that. But again, okay, let's say the holding call didn't happen. Let's say, okay, let's say the holding call happened. Okay, it's 1st and 10 from the 19. Okay, yeah. They have to drive the length of the field in a minute and a half. Like, this is a predominantly running team. This should not be hard. You're supposedly one of the best defenses. This is supposed to be your conference. Here's the thing: if it was flipped and it was 19 Utah, 21 BYU, I could see them being concerned because they're now down to, I think, the 3rd string quarterback. I don't even know. I don't even think that matters. But this is still a situation you're expected to win because your defense is good, and you're telling me that you can't hold them here. You let a 30 passing yard, another 12, and then another 14-yard rush. They lost this game on defense. It's very clear what happened here. This was their defense losing them the game. They put up enough points on offense. They should have won it, but they didn't, and that's where we're at here.
Yeah, you can blame this. It was absolutely the right call. But to say that's what cost you the game when literally your defense gave up 56 yards in 3 plays right in a row, just in the blink of what in 13 seconds here, 13 seconds of game time. That's
Yeah.
not easy to do. If my offense does that, I'm really proud of my offense. And so, what does that say about your defense? The other thing, just checking. You said you fell asleep on your couch. Did you wake up yet? You sound a little tired, Robert.
No, I'm okay. It's been a long couple of months, but
Yeah.
I'm good now. But yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. You're a loser.
Yeah, it very clearly has to be Miami here. There's no doubt in my mind that it's Miami. You are now. We all knew this was coming. We've all been like, okay, someone is going to shut down Miami. Someone is going to just, they're not going to have a good game. Someone's going to just not destroy them, but is going to end this run. They've been playing with fire for weeks. Someone is going to finish them off. I did not think it was going to be Georgia Tech, though, but to be fair, again, last year it was Georgia Tech. That was that game where Miami literally won the game. The game should have been over, but it for some reason wasn't. And it's fitting that it is. Look, I don't even know who the starting quarterback was. I think it was Haynes King, and then it was Aaron Filio came in relief after an injury. I think. I'm not even sure, but maybe not even. I don't even know. But you let up 271 yards on the ground. You have to be more physical than that. And again, they only passed for 99 yards and two touchdowns
Yeah.
between the two of them. You're like, again, this is Georgia Tech. You're telling me the best you could do on the road, which again, Miami to Georgia to Atlanta, not particularly far. That's not the furthest plane ride. You're telling me the best you could do on the road is 23 points. This is the thing, and now it's funny because we all expected the Cam Ward playing Dancing with Fire thing to end horribly with a pick six or something, and it didn't. It just went out with a whimper. It was just, yeah, we don't have enough offense today. That's sad. But the thing is, the best part is this probably eliminates Miami from everything basically, which is hilarious because they were in the first ranking, they were like a top four team, not like top four bracket team. It's complicated, but they were like, people were like, it's a lock. They're going to go to the playoff. Cam Ward's going to be like the number one overall pick. And now that could all just be gone because of another loss 2 consecutive years to Georgia Tech. It's your loser has to be like Miami definitely in terms of loss. Miami definitely lost the most this week, 100%. There's no one else who, in my opinion, who had more on the table and now has less on the table than Miami after this last week.
Yeah, I cannot disagree with that. A couple things. I I wanted to ask a question, but it's so premature, but it illustrates a point. So I'll get to my question, and which will illustrate the point. My question was going to be, and it doesn't even matter right now, which is my point, is who would win the tiebreaker between Miami and Clemson? Now there's still football ready to be played,
Mm-hmm.
but those teams both have one conference loss. And then you have Pitt also, or Pitt's lost two
Two
now.
now. They lost two now,
No,
yeah.
yeah, okay. So it's getting a little more clear, but the point of that question, the reason I don't even want to answer that is like these conferences, as much as I love how competitive they are, you're not, again, I hated the Big 12 just waiting for Oklahoma or Texas to do something stupid for there to be actual competition. I don't like that. It's not fun. This is a lot more fun conference, particularly the Big 12 is the new Big 12, but it's bigger and they're too big and you almost need divisions because you like the connective points and you need that kind of arbitrary dividing point. I love not having divisions if your conference is that size that can facilitate it, but the ACC is just too freaking big and they're not the biggest conference. See Big 10. That's going to be interesting. The other thing is, since you and I have been on this, and I'm not gonna phrase it nearly as what would you make the line because the line is different. I'm gonna ask you a question because I see this box score for Georgia Tech, and it reminds me of another team that is much more effective at this part of it. We're in a first round, and this is great. Miami makes the playoff. First round, you're nodding. You know where this is going.
I think I have a clue.
Neutral field game against Army.
Army, yep.
How many points would you give? And while you're staying on Army,
Yeah, there's no way Miami's not the favorite.
yeah,
Um,
that's why I didn't want to ask that.
yeah,
You want to bet Army? You would give up to how many points? That's the question I'm asking.
6.5.
I was going to say 5.5. Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, the full touchdown. They will destroy them. It won't be like they will. Now again, Army kind of underperformed this week, but Army probably a bit of a look ahead spot there for Notre Dame next week. We're going to be a little fair to Army there, but and they didn't do a lot of passing because I think their quarterback is still recovering a little bit. But instead of having their quarterback throw the ball. He just ran it for like a billion yards. So that's a bit confusing if you're trying to get, not like you're going to beat up, but whatever. But no, straight up, if you're struggling with the rushing attack of Georgia Tech, what is Army going to run for 400 yards? What is,
Tech runs the ball, but
yeah,
they're not assassins like Army.
no, what's Army? If this was Georgia Tech 271 yards, 5.6, what's Army going to do to this team? What's
Yeah.
Army going to do? And then also, Army probably can pass the ball better than Georgia Tech can too. They will
No, they
just,
would.
yeah, they will destroy you in the trenches, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, here's a 20-yard bomb. Good luck.
Yep. So it'd
You're,
be like 9 attempts for about 150 or 160
yeah,
yards.
and 3 touchdowns.
I can't tell you. I would actually just buy, if they put that on Paramount Plus, I would buy Paramount Plus just to watch like how frustrated Mario gets with facing Army,
Yeah,
where they get 5 possessions in a game. It would just be fantastic television.
yeah, and this is the thing, right? We said last week, this is your team. Mario Cristobal, you have Cam Ward, a first-round NFL prospect. You got a bunch of talent on the offense. This is your year to do something. This is your shot. If you don't do something this year, you're not. Cam Ward is basically keeping this team alive right now, and
Yeah.
then you lose it. So the other thing is interesting is the fact that your point about the ACC being too big. I think you also extend that out to the Big 12 as well, because now there is so much. Basically, this loss has probably cost them at least a playoff spot,
No,
an additional one.
absolutely. The
If Miami,
prospect of a
yeah,
playoff spot.
the prospect of a second playoff spot, I'll add. Right, they'll
Yep.
get
Yep.
one, but this eliminates them from 2 playoff spots because now at this point, if Miami had gone undefeated and SMU had gone undefeated, then maybe if there's some other chaos happening in the SEC or the Big Ten, maybe you could make the argument that maybe if SMU wins out and gets the bye, then you could say maybe Miami's better than an Ole Miss, maybe. But again, that's a stretch, right? You can maybe say they're better than an Ole Miss or better than a Georgia or better than. But that's the way I'm saying this now, and it sounds crazy. That's not going to happen. But that was an argument you could have made. You could have said in a one loss Miami is better than them, but you can't make that argument anymore now. They lost to Georgia Tech. This is the problem: is that you're now at a point where these conferences, and I think they haven't quite realized it yet, and they're going to realize it soon. And this is why I think in relatively short order we're gonna see a breakaway from, like, it's gonna be Power Two. They have their own playoff. Then maybe it's even the ACC and the other ones. Maybe they make their own playoff. Maybe the G5 is in there too. Maybe they're their own. Maybe there's a 3-tier playoff in bit. I don't know, but and I think there's going to be a bit of a gap. Whereas I think it's going to be like the top. I think slowly as we see more transfer portal, the ACC and the Big 12 will shrink in terms of talent wise, closer towards the other G5, and the other ones, the Big 10 and SEC will rise bigger. And I think eventually you'll get to a point where it's, yeah, if you take the top G5 schools and you throw them into a playoff with the top and Big 12 schools and whatever the Pac-12 is, I'm not even sure what that is right now. If it's a G5 or a, I don't even know. You throw some of those together, and that may be a competitive playoff. But people haven't quite realized it yet. And we were, I think, one of the first ones to call is, yeah, no, the ACC and the Big 12, they're getting one bid each. That's it. We were the ones to call that early. People were like, no, but we're like, no. And that's, this loss has ensured that now. There's no way the Big 12 is getting two, and this 100% ensured. It was already a small chance, but this just locks it down. It's whoever wins the ACC is going to the playoff, and that's it.
Yeah, we didn't get like the ideal Duke Miami game, but we can just say our prayers nightly that we get Miami Army. Oh my God, please, yes, God. That would be so good. All right, an odd victory lap for me as a USC guy to do a victory lap on this one, but this really hits home two things that I've been saying alternately, sneakily, and explicitly, depending on the conversation. But I've been pointing out for a while that UCLA has a sneaky good run defense, and not top 10, but definitely top 20-ish. And they held a really good run defense here to 80 points, 80 yards. Caleb Johnson, who basically single-handedly launched Iowa to offensive competence plus, that is less than 3 yards a carry right there.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I said, look, this Iowa defense is good, but it's nowhere near the classic. Again, this is one of those things where, the national college football media, oh, Iowa, boy, yeah, they have just same story as always. Great defense. Nope. I haven't had them in the top 20, I don't think, all season. They're pretty good. They're not good. They're nowhere even close to that awesome defense they had 2 years ago. This is a pretty good defense. This is not a great rushing team, UCLA. And they ran for over 5 yards a pop for 200 yards. And this is UCLA. These are like the kids in Westwood. This is West LA. This is not like corn-fed, this, that, the God-fearing people of the Midwest. These are Satanists in Los Angeles that smoke pot and go to raves all day, and they ran for 200 yards on you.
No, it's pretty crazy, right? That's another thing we've been talking about. We're like, hey, this Iowa team's defense, like we came into the season and be like, okay, if Iowa's offense gets a bit better, but their defense regresses, this team is like a 500 team, and that's basically what we're seeing. So it's the Big Ten has gotten a lot more competitive, and Iowa, who in the past has been able to basically just feast off of the Big Ten West and all those teams that have been not good, and then, okay, yeah, you have a couple crossover games with the Big Ten East. You take your beatings from Ohio State and your Penn State and Michigan, maybe whatever, whichever. If you play two of those or one of those in a year, that's your losses. You don't get that anymore. You're playing a lot harder teams now, and the thing is, where before you could only have to play one or two of those, you now can play all three of those teams, or even a better team potentially from an Oregon or apparently a UCLA. No, this is the thing is that Iowa was a team that there was a couple of teams that were really advantaged from the divisional structure, and Iowa was one of those. And I think now that's gone, and now that their defense has regressed, their offense has gotten better. But if not, this team would be horrible. This team would be like 2-8 right now if it hadn't.
They beat USC.
Yeah,
Say it. I'll say it for you.
but that's the thing, right? That's the level here. And if their defense had regressed more or their offense hadn't gotten better, they'd be in worse shape. And I think honestly, this is the thing, right? I think their whole thing was like, okay, we just need to get our offense better. We just need if our offense is better, we're perfect, right? We're good. We'll go undefeated. We'll win the national. But that's not how this works. Things are not completely independent. Just because you have a good defense for a couple of years doesn't mean that's going to continue up. Did you keep getting those prospects? Did you just get lucky for a couple of years? Those guys, a lot of those defensive players are in the NFL. A lot of them are on NFL teams now. You can't just keep restocking NFL defensive caliber players. There's some schools in college that apparently have bottomless wells of NFL wide receivers, but it's really hard to stack defensive talent. That's the really difficult one. You can't just keep grabbing an entire NFL defensive line you can't just have an entire NFL defensive line at every given time. You can have one or two really fast wide receivers and develop them into NFL caliber players. That's fine. But it's really hard to keep stacking defensive talent like that, especially at the college levels. Yeah, it was only a matter of time before their defense regressed, and it's really hard to look at that number of 211 yards to a not good rushing team and be like, yeah, that's fine. It is not fine. This is not good.
Yeah, if they were anywhere near as good as the national narrative claims them to be, there's no way once they go out to a 10-0 lead that they wind up losing. That just doesn't happen. There's no way. All right. Speaking of bad narratives, your victory lap here.
Yeah, no, we're taking Georgia on here, right? We were like, Georgia is not. I don't even remember where it was in our rankings last week, but we were not particularly high on Georgia. We were like, hey, they shouldn't be number 2 or 3.
No, we had them like in the bottom of the top 20.
Yeah, we had them not particularly, and this is a complete validation of all of that here. We are both like, Ole Miss is a top 5 team, Georgia is not, and that is very much on display here. This game also another SEC game that was hyped that was not particularly close. Carson Beck, the Heisman favorite, does not look particularly good, right? And I think people saw that Georgia almost came back against Alabama, and then they destroyed Texas, and they're like, no, Georgia was good. It just, if that game against Alabama hadn't have happened, or if the first quarter hadn't have happened, Georgia would be undefeated, they'd be number 1, they'd be good. But there have been signs here. 59 rushing yards, 186 yards in the air against Ole Miss. This is a team that they routinely destroyed in past years, where they will go up to Ole Miss and they will crush them. And now you're looking at, but look at this offense. They even pulled Jackson Dart late in the game. They just threw in Austin Simmons because they didn't care. Look at that, 263 yards passing, and then 134 more on the ground against Georgia. Basically, what people have argued is one of the best defenses ever in the history of college football. They destroyed them. Now, okay, obviously it's not the same defense, but still though, like, this Georgia team is not that good, and guess what? It doesn't get any better because you got Tennessee this week. So if you lose that game, you're out. You're done. That's a 3rd loss for Georgia. And this is the thing. People thought, oh, this is going to be the year. Georgia's going to win. And again, that was a pretty enticing narrative, right? Oh, Georgia didn't get in last year because Alabama beat them in the championship game, and a bunch of weird stuff with all the conferences have an undefeated winner. So therefore, Georgia didn't get in. This will be their year. But they were not, like, they were dominant last year, but this year was not last year. Carson Beck has been a lot worse this year. A lot of people thinking that Georgia was going to win this thing. This has not been their year, and to be honest, I don't think the SEC is that good. I think this is an SEC-wide problem. I know people are like, no, SEC is still the best conference. Guys, I don't think it is. I think the Big Ten is better than the SEC. And I think the numbers we're seeing on the field, especially in these games, I think that just bears it out that a lot of these teams are like, they're not that much better than everybody else. And I think the Big Ten teams are just better than them.
Yeah, I that's a very difficult, nuanced discussion because when you say better, are you saying as a whole? Are you saying the top, the middle, the bottom? Are you?
True.
It gets tricky. But here's the thing that I love: we're not going to pretend to litigate this in the Music City Bowl when two teams that have between them 50 opt-outs play some random game and it's okay, yeah, take your pick. Boy, Iowa beat Vanderbilt. There, that settles it. Vanderbilt without Diego Pavia. There you go. Who knows? But we will settle it because as much to the chagrin is to of a lot of the hipsters, if you will, of the sport, the vast majority of the bids will be between these two conferences. So
Yeah.
we will be see it settled on the field. All right, overperformers and underperformers. I referred to this team in the context of if they played Miami. We have said for weeks in the previews when we go over the BuckMetrics each week. For about the last month, we've had North Texas as a top 20 offense. And for almost the entire season, I've had them as one of the most explosive passing games in all of FBS. Um, Obviously, they have some issues on defense. They've improved that a little bit. We've played them a couple times. We both had Army here to our success. But what I want to point out here is North Texas has got 5.1 yards per play. And this is a potent offense that before this game was getting 7.0 yards per play before they played Army. The reason that I know it's your model because your model loves the balanced teams, whereas mine just says, okay, you're good at something, great, come on to the top 20. But we're both really high on Army because they are exceptional on both sides. And I think people are not getting this is a legitimate defense. I am not sure how many teams hold North Texas to 3 points, less than 300 yards at home. It's not more than 12. I'm very comfortable saying that. And we already know this is a potent offense. Until basically they didn't have enough passes to qualify for my Apex ratings. You know, the Army quarterback, Bryson, whatever his name, Daly, I think so, yeah. He was top 10. And Team Apex, that's why I do the Team Apex, they're over 200. This is going to be, just to reemphasize the point, even if they don't play in Miami, but God please, yes. But even if they have even if they don't, if they do make the playoffs, whoever they play is in for a rude awakening. Maybe not a loss, but they're going to get shocked.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it is. The only thing in this game that was weird was that they only put up 14 points against them. And I'm not sure why. It feels like it should have been a lot more. It's weird though. They still covered the spread, so that was fine. But yeah, it's they did really
That was
shut.
dicey. North Texas threw two interceptions in the end zone. That was
Yeah,
not a few, not, not a foregone conclusion there.
no, and that's the thing. It was this game was probably closer. I mean, they did cover the spread, but it was probably closer than people had expected. Closer than I had expected for sure. But this team is actually good. Is pretty good defensively. Like it's not like this is just oh, okay. We're just gonna run and pound. This is we have defense. We have like defensive players. So this Army team is pretty well balanced. Like this team will probably go if this team goes into like the playoff. This will be the team that's 17 and a half point underdogs to like some other team, and then they like win outright or something, right? Like this is that's where I see that as the as an outcome for this team potentially if they make it right. It's gonna I think be a coin flip between them and Boise. But to be fair though, Army does have Notre Dame this week, so I think it's very possible that they were looking ahead to Notre Dame, maybe overlooking North Texas a little bit. We'll wait until see this week for them, but let's see what they could do this week. And if they lose this game, then they're out probably. But if they win, things get a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. I was just looking up. They only threw the ball 4 times, Army did. So I think that explains some of it. You
Yeah.
know, the reason they're so much better this year is, you know, traditionally they stink at passing the ball. And I don't know what they did. I'm not an X's and O's guys, but they figured out how to basically meld a passing game and they've just been devastating passing. So I think that explains why it was closer than what we would expect. The other thing I want to just say is, you know, this performance by the Army defense, that basically equates to a power rating of about 14 or 15, which would place them We'll get to it in part 2, but basically easily in the top 5. And that's not an exception. It's an exceptional performance, but it's nothing that really shocks the conscience here in terms of like, boy, didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we'll go to your over performer here.
Yeah,
Actually, you know what? Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry.
South Carolina here. We knew this team was like good, but this good? This is a Vanderbilt team that beat Alabama outright and was very competitive against Texas, and they just got beat down by the South Carolina team, 28-7. I think we actually had the under in this game, and finally South Carolina cashed an under for us.
Yeah.
So I guess in this one game they didn't have 3 crazy defensive scores. So shout out to them for scoring the right way, the way God intended. But no, 238 yards passing, 214 yards on the ground. That's very balanced. But look at the stat. They completely shut down Pavia, 166 yards passing, and then only 108. This is just a complete dominant performance by South Carolina. And normally, if they beat Vanderbilt this way, I'd be, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. But this is a good Vanderbilt team. This is probably one of Vanderbilt's probably best ever teams. Definitely best in the last 30 years. I don't even know how long it's been since Vanderbilt's had a good team, right? It's been a long time. And you just completely shut them down. Respect for that. Absolutely just a domination in this game.
Yeah. We've been believers in the South Carolina defense pretty much from the first set of metrics, but that offense is really runs hot and cold, and this was a hot day. When you've got this kind of balance, and when Sellers is like the best version of himself, and he didn't even run for that much too, that's what's really scary here. He's like a lesser version of Milroe in that regard, and that he can get in the open field and really make you miserable. We didn't even see that, so lucky for Vanderbilt that they got like his B plus game rather than his A game there. All right, my underperformer. I think I've got 2 here. This is really dumb, but I'm going to say first that this is a podcast I regularly listen to, Split Zone Duo. Stephen Godfrey is an exceptional reporter. He's by far the best reporter in college football, absolutely without a doubt. Now, what's the problem that I say with reporters is that the better the reporter, the worse analyst that they are. And this was just on his podcast last week. I just thought, are you kidding me? So he asked his 2 co-hosts, are Wake Forest and Cal, because they played each other, are these the 2 worst offenses in FBS? And I just thought, what? Has this guy not heard of Kennesaw State or Kent State or New Mexico State? I just thought that was really weird. Really weird. And look, I had the under in this game, so I didn't really see 82 points coming, but I just thought, look, Cal's got an above average defense, and Wake Forest is functional. It's not like horrible. So I like Mr. Godfrey. I wanted to help him. So I pointed out to him, you're an exceptional reporter, but boy, you are not a good analyst. Here you go. This was early fourth quarter. We had 75 points, and he called me a fucking dork and all this and that. I just want to point out something, Robert, though. If you look at Cal's games, okay, who has scored the most points against Cal all season? Only one team scored more than Wake Forest, and that is Miami, who's a top 5 offense.
Yeah.
Look at Wake Forest's schedule all year. Who has outscored more than Cal did? Only Clemson, who's like a top 15 offense. I don't know, man. Like I said, I've discovered it over the last 2 years, but Jesus. Reporters need to report and just leave the actual analysis to folks like us, because it is 2 completely different paths.
This is the interesting thing, because people will... there are a lot of analysts who cling to these, because he's saying the 75th in...
Scoring offense.
Scoring offense. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yep.
Is that total points? Because that is completely dependent on schedule. That's completely dependent on who you play, right? This is
and pace of play.
Pace of play, right? Again, I don't think you can call a team that put up 38 points against Miami one of the worst offenses in FBS. You want to make the case for Wake Forest? Okay. I don't love it, but okay. But definitely not Cal. Cal's offense has done stuff.
Watch 3 Conference USA games, and you will never say something like that again about Wake Forest being anywhere near as bad as at least 2 of those offenses.
Watch Middle Tennessee State try to play football. It's rough. They're not the worst in FBS. Yeah, that's a bit of... Again, we did have the under in this game, but again, we were like, okay, there's going to be points scored. But we underestimate how many points are going to be scored, but again, there's a lot of pacing that goes into that, because it's, okay, you're scoring faster, so then I score faster, so then et cetera, right? But again, we expected less than, 54? We didn't expect 10 points.
All right. My other underperformer, there's no way you watch this game. I doubt you get the weird channel on which it was broadcast. I'll just say it's Channel 5 where I live.
Oh, I think I wanted to see this game. This is Fox Sports, right?
No, this is like obscure. Like you've never seen this graphics package. It's not the true TV. It's nothing like that.
The CW one?
It's it's powered up. Yes, I think it is CW actually.
Oh yeah, we definitely don't
Yeah.
get that in Canada, no.
Yeah, and it's a weird announcing team. So you probably didn't see this, but I got to say, the Oregon State passing offense is just a perverse masterpiece. It's so bad. It's just and Belgram Gulbranson came into to I don't know if he relieved or Giovanni whatever his name is hurt, but Oregon State is trying to come back on San Jose State, who we had here, getting points in this game, which is just an absolute joke because they won straight up as we predicted. But here's Gulbranson's contributions to the fourth quarter comeback. 11 minutes left. He throws a pick six that makes it a two-score game. Next possession on 4th and 4, basically at midfield, incomplete pass by Mr. Gulbranson. All right, that's the end of that possession. Not to be unexpected. The real masterpiece was this one. So then they get back the ball back another time. They're trying to make it a one-score game here. Around midfield, he throws another interception. Now, the problem is there was a holding that was away from the play, so they get bailed out from that. So then the ensuing series of plays, basically on 3rd and 10, he throws an incomplete pass. There's no way this team's ever going to convert on 4th and 10. So that kind of seemed to be the game. And yet there was a targeting call that extended that, gave it another first down. So predictably, they moved the ball down to the 4-yard line. And how does it end? With an interception in the pass in the end zone. It just I've never seen a quarterback just so. It's not like he was trying to just to lose, but boy, the consistency was just remarkable.
Yeah, this is a pretty rough. If you're at 4th and 4, could you not run the ball? If this is who you've got throwing it, I think you have to at least try to
Exactly.
consider jet sweep, something like a
Like not
third.
a pass.
Yeah, like a 3rd and 3 from your 2, intercepted, like a pick six from your own 2. Come on, throw the ball away, live another day. What are you doing here? You didn't need to do this. And then again, it kind gets bailed out a couple times, and then obviously another interception. Yeah, I don't understand why they returned it, why they turned it out of the end zone, but whatever. That's on San Jose State there at the end. Maybe they were excited or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's very rough. I don't know what they were like. At a certain point, you just have to say, all right, it's not. That's very rough. Again, I think it's to be fair. We were on San Jose State and we won money, so that's great. But yeah, it's not great when this is the performance you're returning on your offense.
No, and I promise you, this will not be in the Week 12 preview. There's no way I would even think about putting this in Island Time. But boy, a game that it's a shame not to mention, at least just for the comedy aspect of it, is Oregon State plays Air Force this week. That's
Oh,
just a gem. That's
that's
beautiful.
brutal. Oh God.
All right, and on that topic,
Yeah. Speaking of struggles with the passing offense, we haven't talked a lot about Florida State this year for various good reasons, and you never want to pick on someone when they're down, but I think we have to here because this is whole new levels of bad here. Now, this is the end stats. They had completed, I think, in the first half, actually, in the first half, and then I think 3 minutes into the second half, they had completed 3 passes. Three for 14 yards. Oh, with 2 different quarterbacks that completed 3 passes. I think Brock Glenn was one of 10. So he pulled it back, if you could call it pulling it back. This is, I think, the worst passing box score I think I've ever seen, except for some of those FIU ones. Yeah, there we
be
go.
fair.
Just throw it, get FIU catching strays here. But okay, this is Florida State, right? This is not FIU. I get the benching of DJU because he was not good. Clearly, he is better than this.
No,
This is the thing. They were competitive with Georgia Tech, and that's a statement we could. They were competitive with Georgia. They would not even be remotely competitive with Georgia Tech right now. They were competitive with Georgia Tech. They are competitive with Memphis. That's better than where they are right now. 3 points. Now, okay, yes, it's Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's a top 12 team right now, or whatever. 3 points. That's the best you could do. 3 points against Notre Dame. Three passing completions in the first half. Wow. That is. And now, to be fair, Florida State obviously got the message before I told them the message just now. They fired not they did not fire the head coach. They did not fire Mike Norvell, but they fired their offensive coordinator, I think
Yep.
the wide receivers
Wide receiver
coach,
coach.
and someone else. I'm
I
not
think
sure
the
who.
defensive coordinator.
Why not? May as well just go for everybody, basically. Just start firing equipment managers too, the guy in the weight room, just everybody. Start cleaning house. But no, this is a whole new level of low. And yes, this Florida State team is in really rough shape. But man, this is one of the worst losses I've ever seen. They definitely don't have any hope and respect here. but,
I
but
forgot about that.
yeah, I know. Just what a horrible year for Florida State. God, this is really bad. I've not seen. And again, this is the thing. It's like they had a really good year last year, and then everybody left, and now this is what's left, and it's just like you got nothing. Now you can restock through the portal. You probably have some recruits coming up. But you're at such a deficit now where I don't even know if this is like a G5 team playing in the ACC. And not even like a good G5 team, like a bad G5 team playing in the ACC. Can you get a G5 level team up to competitive in the ACC in one off season? I don't know. And that's a challenge.
Yeah. A couple of this one might surprise you because I've made a point about how usually it's just a horrible idea to fire a coordinator in the middle of the season. We've had example after example about how it just doesn't work. Even in this episode with Utah and their offense just being not one single microbit better than before when they still had Andy Ludwig. I got to say, in this case, it makes sense because it's been so abysmal. I think that if you don't get these coordinators out who just really just stunk this year, it's going to hurt recruiting because you can't have these guys recruit and you can't recruit around them. So I think it's so bad that it gets awkward and you had to do it. So I think that's probably the right move. Alex Adkins, the offensive coordinator, will probably be picked up pretty quickly because he's an exceptional offensive line coach, and those are hard to come by. You left out the good news here, which is DJU's had a rough year, but hey, at least the quarterback position is in great hands going forward here. This is really something to look forward to.
Yeah. I don't even know. Brock
Yeah.
Glenn, like a sterling 5 for 18 with 2 interceptions. I think one of those was a pick six, too. I'm not sure. One of them was really bad. I remember seeing the highlight of it. It was like, oh god, that was rough. And then Luke Kromenhoek, I don't know. That's a very American name, very Midwestern American name. No, he didn't throw a pick six. There you go. There's a bright
No.
spot there.
But he had a very Iowa performance there, we'll say. So, all right. Things that annoyed Robert. Why do I have a feeling that we're going to see a version of this kind of graphic every time?
Yeah. So this is the thing. So obviously on Tuesday night, ESPN revealed their first college football playoff rankings. That's great. They needed to do it eventually. And it's good that they picked a night that nothing else was happening on. Really good for them for that nothing else was happening, specifically at 7 o'clock Eastern Time when they had nothing else. Nothing important happening. And this is the thing, and yes, is there a small community of people who obviously the community of people who there is a community of people who deeply care about both of these. It's relatively small, but there is people who are now. That being said, obviously there's a much wider community who care about this and also care about the other thing that was happening at 7 o'clock Eastern last Tuesday night. And I'll pull this quote from the story where basically, yeah, on Tuesday, November 5th, the nation will finally learn the results it's been waiting for. They're going to reveal the bracket. And it's obviously with Election Day. And basically, the simultaneous events don't appear to be a concern for either ESPN or the CFP. Playoff Executive Director Rich Clark, who will oversee his first postseason since taking over the role from Bill Hancock earlier this year, painted as a positive. Everyone's going to be thinking about the election, and then they can take their mind off it a little bit with football. Why? This doesn't matter. This bracket is already dead. It's literally already dead. Georgia lost. Your 3 and your 4 seed, or your 3 and your 2 seed, have already lost. This bracket is completely dead. Boise almost lost to a bad Mountain West team. This entire bracket is pointless and dead. It's election night. Let people care about the election night. It's going to impact them for the presidential election for the next 4 years. This is completely a pointless exercise. No one cares about this. This is dead within a week now. The thing is, was I expecting ESPN to do election coverage, Stephen A. Smith in front of a magic wall? No, that was not happening. But you could have at least just, I don't know. The thing is, I feel like what happened was this was like getting mixed up at ESPN where they were like, oh, there's no NBA games on that night. We should do the first playoff rankings that night. Because they forget why that there's no NBA games that night. Because there's no NBA
Mhm.
night. Because it's the election night. So, no, this is just really annoying and really dumb, and it's so stupid because it doesn't actually matter. Like, this ranking has no impact on it. It's already pointless. It's already dead. Like, if you like, why do you have to do this on a Tuesday? What's the advantage of doing this on Tuesday? What, you don't want to interfere with Monday Night Football? You can't have this as the lead to Monday Night Football? Did you really need to give the committee another 24 hours to decide this ranking, which is basically the same as the AP poll, with one key exception though, one key difference from the AP poll? They shuffled up Boise to 12, which
Uh-huh.
is exactly what I said they were going to
Yes,
do
you
last
did.
week. Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Because I feel on some level, like when people talk about conspiracy theories, there's different levels of conspiracy theory, right? There's the Alex Jones, they're turning the frogs gay conspiracy theories, and then there's this actually just straight up happened conspiracy theory. And I feel like mine is literally this just happened, and they're just like, we're just gonna, instead of having a controversy every year when we just put a G5 team in a 20th ranked G5 team into the playoff, let's just rank them 12th, and then no one has any problems because then it's fine, right? And I feel like they just decided that they're going to do this. They just didn't say this. And my only really surprise thing for the rankings is the fact that Army was 20th, and I feel like they're going to rectify that because now they need to justify they need to push Army up this week. I guarantee you Army's probably going to be up higher, probably like 15th or something, because they're going to have to say, I think they thought Boise was going to win decisively against Nevada, and then they're going to be like, that's good. Boise will win out. We're all going to be good. They're 12th. Maybe they even inch up a little bit because other teams losing ahead of them. But now they're going to start panicking. Now they're going to be like, we have to raise Army up because if Boise State loses, we need to justify Army being number two, like number 12. Again, this is all insane. This is all so unbelievably stupid. And maybe someday this will make sense. But for now, we're stuck with this insane system that for some reason they decided to unveil on election night. I don't know why. Again, nothing else is happening at 7 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday. It was perfect time to unveil this thing that was completely pointless and is already dead. So, good job, ESPN.
Yep. Not a huge thing. What else was happening at 7 p.m. at Eastern time? That would be two MAC games. They couldn't coordinate around that. Good job, guys. The other thing is, I just do want to say that these are the same. We've clearly just said that these people are not hopeless, but they're more hopeless than hopeful. These are the same geniuses that said they were going to reinvent. I don't know if you remember this because this is before the podcast. They were going to reinvent New Year's Eve by moving playoff games to,
Yes.
or like, yeah, to like on the 31st. Because, hey, what on the same topic, nobody's really doing anything on the 31st, right?
Yeah.
Or we can just, hey, I know that you're at a party and you're doing upside down keg hits with your buddies up there in Ontario, but you know what? Just what's his thing here? What's his awesome? Yeah, let's take a little bit off your mind of the upside down keg hits and just all of a sudden just randomly just have a playoff game.
Yeah.
Sure, because why not?
Uh,
That goes so well
no,
because
yeah.
everybody knows when you have, I don't know, here when you have the housewife from the yacht base in a New Year's Eve party, I guarantee you she's going to be so understanding if I say, can you please be quiet because I'm watching Alabama play Washington for a shot in the championship game. I know she'll be very understanding and forgiving of that sentiment.
Yeah. And again, it's not like there's any other traditional thing a lot of Americans watch on New Year's Eve either. No, nothing. Not a thing
No,
comes to mind. No,
no,
nothing specifically at midnight. And it's really funny because 2 years ago, when it was Ohio State, Georgia, I remember this vividly because
yeah,
I
that's right.
because it was right at midnight because I watched the ball drop and then I changed the channel back and I saw the worst field goal kick ever and I'm like, okay, that happened. It's insane. Take your own day. You don't have to try to like just pick a day. It's fine. You're not the NFL. That's fine. Just pick a
Yeah,
day and own that time. I don't understand. The thing is, if you are actually trying to compete with election night in some sort of meaningful way, you know what? I can actually see that. That's fine. You know what? If you wanted to put something on, I would not recommend two MAC games, but whatever. If you wanted to actually try to compete with election night, sure. This is pointless. This is already dead. This doesn't matter. Like basically the only one that matters is the final one. This is only so a bunch of people on ESPN can just get angry at each other for the next 3 days. And I remember that someone was like, "How can you justify?" I remember someone saying this because the thing is, the ranking is Ohio State second and Georgia's three, and they were already. I remember one guy. I think it was a clip from the night it was released, or sometime later, I can't remember, but he was like, "Oh, they're only ranking Ohio State 2 because they only lost to Oregon by a point. Georgia has better wins." And then they immediately get destroyed by Ole Miss. So it has no bearing on anything. It doesn't matter. This is already dead. And okay, were people who were like changing the channel to watch this really caring that much about the results in Georgia? I don't think so. But I think it's just dumb that this was happening at the same time. I think we can all agree this was a dumb idea to do this at the same time.
Maybe it was brilliant, and they're not behind me, but we have two dogs, and my wife loves dogs. I love dogs, but I don't love them as much as she does. In that she will actually during the Super Bowl watch the Puppy Bowl, and I
Yeah.
think we've got like the Puppy Bowl thing where they just made this drop like the Puppy Bowl, where it's okay, yeah, we'll just you can just take a look at it and just I don't know.
It's like the
Good
puppy
job,
bowl,
as always.
the puppy bowl, but with somehow lower stakes.
Exactly. As always, the committee inspiring just boundless confidence. Well done, guys. All right. Narduzzi Award. I want to give proper context to a notion that you said about the worst game that you've ever seen because I have Exhibit A. This is Patient Zero. This is unspeakably bad. Kent State, year 2 of the Kenny Burns project, and there might be a year 3. I want to point out 114 total yards by Kent State against a pretty good Ohio, but not awesome Ohio team. This is 37% fewer yards than what we were referring to, the Grayson James game. He outperformed the Kent State team here. That was at least, I think that was a week 0 game, the Grayson James game. This is deep into the season where you might be a little banged up, but at least you know who's who and what's what. This is a new level. This is just unspeakably bad. And so what can you say than 30% worse than the Grayson James game? That just says it all. I also wanted to point along as I was like researching for this, and I got to Kenny Burns' Wikipedia page. I don't think there's a lot of objectivity in whoever contributed this to Wikipedia. I've never seen anything like this. His head coaching debut against UCF in the 23 season is considered one of the worst in FBS history. I didn't know that. Still learning about this sport, but congratulations on that. Nothing warm, nothing even. The warmest thing that is here is he has a $3 million contract that ends in 28. That's like the most positive thing. His only win to date is beating. This is just a great entry here. Is over Central Connecticut, the lowest ranked team in FCS at that time. That is the only win for Mr. Burns at Kent State. Well done.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. Considered one of the worst in FBS history. The Golden Falcons 6-56 defeat. Yeah, it's pretty rough. Yeah, Kent State is. Yeah, Central Connecticut is like an okay basketball team, and if your one win is against them, that's not particularly good in football, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's Kent State has had a couple of rough years, and I think this is again. But the thing is, again, do you even have $3 million to buy him out? Florida apparently doesn't have the money to buy out Billy Napier, or I'm not sure exactly what's happening there, but maybe Kent State doesn't have $3 million, so they're gonna be stuck with him for another 4 years, maybe. I don't know.
Yep. Looks like it. All right, your Narduzzi Award.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give it to Matt Campbell here of Iowa State. And Iowa State, the board was set up for you guys, right? All you had to
Yep.
do was go undefeated, and you lose to Texas Tech narrowly. And okay, you know what? Okay, Texas Tech has done some things, that's fine. But all right, you just win out the rest of your schedule and you're good. And Kansas has had a very rough year. They have not been nearly as good as expected. Jalen Daniels was on the bum list for a large part of the season. Not a particularly great season from him either. So all you got to do is you got to beat them defensively and just score more points than them, and then you're good. And you can't do that. You let up 45 points over 500 yards there in total. Just and shout out to Rocco Becht trying his hardest. He like 383 yards, 3 passes. He's just trying so hard, and it's just not working here, man. I feel, and again, it's. I'm giving this to them partly because I do have an Iowa State to make the CFP ticket that I guess is dead now, and that makes me sad. But also, it's just, what are you doing here? You've had your shot. You've been
Yeah.
trying to win the Big 12 for so long. Oklahoma's gone. Texas is gone. This is your shot. You got a clear path, a straight shot. All you got to do is just win out, and you're beating a bunch of teams that you're better than. You should be able to have this. And what happens? You lose to Texas Tech, and then you lose to Kansas. Again, you were on a cruise path here. All you had to do was just win out. And I think there is still a path, but you got to be super deflated at this point if you're Iowa State, or if you have an Iowa State ticket to win the Big 12. But this is the thing where it's just you gotta feel pretty rough here. It feels it's so hard. You had such a clear path. All you had to do was just win out, and they couldn't. Yeah, it sucks.
As touchdown favorites. I'll just keep it at that for now because I
Yeah.
do have a nugget in the next segment here. But yeah, I could not agree more. This was just a confounding result. I don't know. Maybe Jalen Daniels just found himself this year post Andy Kotelnicki. But yeah, that was no bueno for the Cyclones here and Matt Campbell. All right. We end up the review of week 11 with some items noted for future reference on your last topic. That defense has not come to play the last 2 weeks. Before the last two games, Iowa State was giving up less than 5 yards per play. Now, last two games, over 6.2. That's totally different. And it's not like they were facing Miami and Oregon. I'll just say that. I don't know what's going on there. I don't follow injuries close enough. I don't know if there's some key injuries there, but boy, that is just a shocking turn there. Guess who's back? Last week, Billy Napier. It was announced that he's not fired. You're now 1-3. Fired Billy Napier retires at a brisk 3-2 in conference play. Hey, above 500. Good job, fired Billy Napier. Maybe get some of those like third place votes for SEC Coach of the Year.
I I don't know what the hell are they doing. It makes no sense. They're like, all right, he's fired. We just got to call the meeting. It's done.
Yep.
Nope, he's good. I don't know. Now, to be fair, they lost their starting quarterback and they lost their backup quarterback that was showing some promise. So yeah, a lot of injuries, and I think the hardest schedule in all of FBS, that does not help. So maybe you say, okay, we want to give this another year. And I think also maybe you're looking at the coaching portal and you're looking at the coaching carousel and you're not loving it because there's not a lot of, oh yeah, this guy, right? If Ryan Day had two losses, you'd be, yeah, okay, maybe we can fire Billy Napier, right? But like, who's the best coach available? Like we had said before, Jamie Chadwell, that's not happening now. He's not done well there at Liberty this year. Who's the next, like outside of Kurt Signetti? But again, I don't think Indiana's not going to let him go anytime soon. They're gonna try to extend him, and they have Big Ten money, so they could just pay to keep him there, right? There's not a lot of coaches that are obvious fits here, right?
I wasn't going to go here, but here's a name, and I think that he's maybe not too old. I was just thinking about who's been really overachieving that would be realistic. Now, seeing as they went G5 and it's not worked out, then maybe they wouldn't do this. But what about Rich Rodriguez? He's done a great job at Jacksonville State, literally undefeated in conference play after a really rough game one there. I don't know. It's interesting. The other thing, what you said was a really mature and measured response in terms of what they should do. But the other side is, you know what they should just say is, look, just to get fired Billy Napier back, he's going to get fired at some point, just not this year. Just so at least you have this coach on your staff instead of this guy. Maybe that's the play.
This is the thing, right? When you have to put out a statement saying we're not firing someone, it means they're very clearly going to be fired at some point. This is like
today.
That's the thing, right? It's so dumb that you would even put that statement out. That alone is like the kiss of death. Now, to be fair, TJ Langway looked good for a bit, and then he got injured, and the backup quarterback is throwing to the other team, so that's not particularly helpful. But again, at some point, this has to be on the coach. It's okay, you knew your quarterback was Graham Mertz. He did okay last year. Okay, but did you do anything to get him better weapons? No, we lost Ricky Pearsall, and we didn't really do much to improve that. Okay, what'd you do on the rushing attack? We lost our star running back to Georgia. Okay, what did we do on defense? That's bad too. Okay, then what did you do specifically? I don't. At some point, there has to be like, okay, you did not improve this. This is not better. Now, I don't know. They play LSU. For some reason, they're only 4-point underdogs. I'm not sure why. That seems low, but I don't know. It's very weird. I don't know. I don't think they should have. I don't think I don't know what you do. I think Florida's just stuck now. I think Florida's stuck. I don't think there's anything they can do, and I think this is just bait. We're just gonna punt this problem until next year until it's too big of a problem, and then they fire them. So they fire everybody
Yeah.
basically.
Just one thing, just to correct you a little bit. I will say that when Auburn said that they weren't going to fire Brian Harsin, that did work out just great. Live and learn, maybe.
How long was that? Was it like what? Was it that? It was the next year, right?
It was in February of the same calendar year that he got fired.
True. Yeah. They said we're
Yeah.
not gonna fire him in February, and then they fired him like midway through the next season.
Yeah. Yeah. So that had a shelf life of 8 months. I don't know. Shocking that Auburn has athletic department issues. I didn't see this game, but I just looked at the box score. It stood out. Dylan Gabriel has a 62 apex and no interceptions. Did they just try a bunch of underneath stuff? That did you see the game or no?
I I didn't see it, but I've clearly seen Oregon slipping a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Again, they're still good, and again, a 62 apex. I think they were in Maryland, right? So it is a bit of
No, it's at
travel.
home.
Oh, it's at home. Okay, yeah, that's concerning. But they have been slipping the last couple of weeks, and I think their schedule towards the end is a little easy. So maybe they're just trying to lay off, get a little bit extra rest there. Don't try to be too competitive. But that's a little concerning. I'm not going to lie. It's a little concerning that they're letting the foot off the gas a little bit here. But again, Maryland does some weird stuff. Sometimes they're good. So who knows?
Yeah. All right. I've been, we're just, I keep on referencing this, but it becomes like more and more absurd. Now, maybe Rice is really good now that they fired Mike Bloomgren, but Memphis, they won. The stats, I looked at the box score. I'm like, this doesn't look good. I looked at my numbers. Memphis had a 33% post game win expectancy over Rice. They won. And this is versus Rice. This is a home game. This isn't even, not that Rice is a tough place to play. At home, it the foundation is crumbling there in Memphis, I think.
Yeah, they're having some problems, and Rice has actually been like weirdly good the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think they were. You guys talked about them, and I was not there. You guys talked about them for an island time, and
Yeah.
I think you guys decided against a play there. But I said, yeah, I would consider a play, and it was right. The play on Rice was right.
That was one of those classic, boy, what does the model know that I don't, which
Hmm.
is always a lot. Probably the best firing of this year. East Carolina is 2-0 by a margin of 105 to 48 since they fired Mike Houston. They're now 5-4. They're poised to make a bowl. And in the 2 games since Houston was fired, Caden Hauser, you might remember him from Michigan State, 2 out of 3 Apex. How about that? It's like he's playing for Army.
Yeah, they beat Navy, right? Or
Uh,
someone. They beat someone unexpected.
yeah, I don't think,
No,
was
it
it
wasn't
Navy?
Navy. Was it App State? It was someone they shouldn't have beaten.
Nah, shoot. Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I remember the first one was like extremely unexpected. But yeah, no, again, it's funny how sometimes just firing your coach fixes things. It's surprisingly, you refresh the locker room, you get a new person in there, you can re-energize the troops. Sometimes it works. It's random, especially in the NFL. It's like pretty well documented in the NFL where, yeah, if you bring it for college, it's a bit more unclear because sometimes your team is just worse than the other team, so it doesn't matter. But in the NFL, yeah, sometimes just firing a coach who's a toxic personality or something, you just immediately start getting better results.
Yeah. All right, and last, boy, I told you I was nervous about this, and this is just this UTEP coach. My God, I want nothing to do with this guy. And this is actually dual model play, and somehow we won. UTEP wins in overtime, double overtime actually, against vaunted Kennesaw State, who's still only win of the season over Liberty. Yes, they even lost to UT Martin, FCS UT Martin. But that UTEP coach, he somehow managed to go to overtime in a game in which he had a 92% post game win expectancy. I don't know what the opposite of magic is, but this guy has it in bucket loads here in UTEP.
Yeah, it was crazy. UTEP had a pretty big lead. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good because I think we had a 4.5, so I'm like, it's good. And then went to overtime, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. But wait, it's college football, not NFL, so they have to score touchdowns here. And I'm like, okay, the first one goes by, they tie it up. I'm like, oh no, because this game was on one of the channels that I also don't get. I think was this on FS1? No, there's no way this was on FS1.
There's no way.
Yes,
Yeah,
no
this
way.
had to be online. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it was on like an obscure ESPN, like ESPN News or something, and it was like and that's right. I only get some of the ESPNs now, not all the ESPNs, but Oh no, it was ESPN Plus. That's why, because I don't get some of the ESPN Plus games. But anyway, so I'm like, I want to watch it. I was just box score watching this, and for some reason their box score thing just completely breaks in overtime. So I have no idea what's happening. And then it goes to double
Uh-huh.
overtime, and then UTEP scores, and I'm like, okay, and I'm like, and then it just continues, and there's nothing's happening, and nothing's happening. And all of a sudden, it's and then it was like fourth down. I think they had an incomplete pass, in, and I'm one. I'm like, oh, okay, but this was way too close. Why was this close? And the best part is that the cap on this is that Kennesaw State fired their coach for some reason. I don't
Well,
know.
for some reason,
For some reason, I don't know
for
why.
many reasons.
The thing is,
None of them good, but there's a lot of reasons.
I don't know. Do you like fire the captain of the Titanic mid sinking of the ship? I don't. I think you just wait for the ship to sink, and then you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
just don't. We're not paying for you to come back. I don't. Just find your own way back to Newfoundland. I don't. I think that's what. I don't know. It seems a bit like the ship's go. This isn't. Oh, we need to save this. Your 2 games left in the season. What are you
Yeah.
doing here? You're gonna turn around in the last 2 games. Watch. They'll turn around and kill our
Don't say it.
over.
Don't
Yeah.
say it.
No, don't.
No,
Yeah, I don't say
no,
it.
don't say it. Well, they have Sam Houston. They're not going to beat them, and then they
Okay.
have sneaky competent FI. Believe me, I've studied the hell out of this one. I know this better than when I was prepping for the CPA exam. They're not going to beat Sam Houston. FIU and Louisiana Tech are sneaky competent by CUSA standards, so I don't think they're going to do it. But I appreciate you trying to jinx them. I can tell you exactly what happened when the app went out. I guarantee you that the 19-year-old intern that's actually updating it, once it goes to the second overtime, he's just, this is UTEP and Kennesaw State. I cannot. I guarantee you he just walked out of the press box like, you guys do it yourself. I'm done. I cannot take this anymore.
Who could possibly care about this game? No one cares about this game. I
Found
don't
the
even.
two
It's
people that do.
yeah. It's on random ESPN. No one cares about this game. No one knows. No one cares if they win or not. It's fine. No one cares. And I'm just like, what
Nope.
happened? Was it an interception?
Shout out to that guy or lady if she's watching. You should be, since we're of like minds. But Robert, that is it. Thank you, college football, for being the best sport that we have ever known, and will continue to know. Robert, I will see you in the Week 12 preview, and all the viewers and listeners, thank you so much. We will see you there as well. Until then, bye.